Send lawyers, guns and money. Send lawyers, guns and money.
Just give me a little bit of background about Butterworths. I mean, you've been a panel member of LawyerFair, a loyal panel member of LawyerFair for many, many months, probably almost since we started, actually, and a great office and firm for us to deal with. So, just a bit of background about the firm.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we started life in 1993. Originally, one chap, the original senior partner, Tony Butterworth, who's still around and alive and kicking. Originally started life as a high street firm, so doing things like crime, matrimonial, resi conveyancing, and out of the residential conveyancing, we kind of started to get some corporate contacts, and then began to realise there is life beyond that sort of standard high street work. So we still do lot very strong residential business just outside the top 50 with land registry. But my focus now really is on the commercial side, or has been for a while. So we're looking to build commercial property work. We do quite a lot of commercial property work. It's mostly transactional work. We would be the first people to say, we don't do that kind of top 5% brain surgery, which is kind of the domain of city firms.
Yeah.
And we know that, we don't have a team of 26 people to work on a merger. But the converse of that is what we offer is sensible, focused, reasonable price commercial legal transactions. So, a lot of our clients are SMEs. We've got very similar issues, businesses as them. So we know how they work. We know what's needed. So that's where we really sit, and we sit in that space for commercial property work. So leases, acquisitions. We sit on that space for litigation work. So we do a lot of tailored business loan claims. Again, that SME market, and actually sort of getting into the agricultural market, and also general commercial work. So we're quite innovative and quite creative in terms of the way we draft things, partnership agreements, joint ventures, and we're fairly well. And that's really where we want to stay. We're not really trying to compete with the big boys. They do very well, and we'd struggle with that. But really, there's a whole market that we can look at, and where we sit, and we think we sit very well. Been quite lucky actually, because in it we've actually attracted some quite big clients who quite like that common sense ethos about who we are and what we do. So we're developing. Team's still quite small, six in the commercial team. When we aspirationally would like to probably double that. So that's where we are. Litigation very strong now, very, very strong on litigation. So I think we're very keen on being known as the go-to for transactional business on the commercial side.
Well, as I say, John, you've been with us since the beginning, and overwhelmingly positive feedback from
right.
Customers of LawyerFair. So a very a great partner to us, really, in terms of our growth. So now we're going to focus on one particular area, and you very kindly wrote an article. Now, just to give a bit of background, it's actually an area that I'm not particularly savvy about. So. And I must confess, I see a lot of people on our Twitter feed offering advice on capital allowances, and I kind of park it alongside the guys who want to buy you 1,000 Twitter followers and articles on Kim Kardashian's bottom or something. It's not something I tend to focus on much. But you wrote a great article for us, and I want to just go a little deeper into people who buy commercial property and whether they're missing out on tax relief, because there were some changes recently, John, weren't there? You alluded to in your article. Just give us a bit of background to that.
Yeah, I mean, potentially there are people who've missed out, because the thing with it is, in the context of a transaction, lawyers will normally be focused on the key things, title issues, searches. They'll go a little outside of what you might do in terms of planning. But it's capital allowances. A lot of lawyers will say, well, okay, tax is not my job. Absolutely. It's not my role. Yeah. And actually, we would say tax is not our job. But what I think is our job, and I think that that we need as lawyers need to be alive to, is that since last year the double claiming, or the potential just to knock in a claim from a down on, And for the if a seller has already claimed capital allowances on fixtures and fittings, then a buyer is not going to be able to do it again. So if you kind of take it back to basics, really. So when you buy a commercial property, you'll in lots of cases you'll buy the land and the buildings, but you'll also buy fixtures and fittings, and it's possible to claim tax allowance on those fixtures and fittings that you buy. But now that it can only be claimed once, that tax allowance on those fixtures, you've really got to be alive to it, and you've got to be alive to the fact that if the seller's already claimed, then the buyer's claim will fail. And there is a question in the standard commercial property inquiry form, and if anyone who's seen the standard form, it's about 40 pages long. It's full of stuff that mostly doesn't apply to the transaction, and you still see this to this day, where the reply to the inquiry from the seller is, that's not applicable, or see accountants, which is fine, but actually it's a real issue, because you're talking about real cash. You're talking about a buyer of a commercial property being able to claim, in some cases, a fairly significant allowance, particularly when you're thinking about industrial use, where fixtures and fittings can have some real value. If you're looking at a news agency and you've got a couple of pop stands or newspaper stands, it's neither here nor there, but for some people who are buying industrial units or other units like that, it's a real difference. It's a big deal. So really, the big thing is that historically it's been the domain of accountants, but really buyers need to be alive to it, and you need to be asking your lawyer, well, have you checked what's happened? As standard now at Butterworths, what we'll do is we'll look at that inquiry, and if the seller is not specific, we'll go back and say, actually, have you claimed it? What are you doing? And get a specific answer. And that's really important from the client's perspective, because if they're buying from a corporate, as they would do with, say, some sort of repossession or something like that, they'll have a standard response in their inquiries where they'll actually try and mitigate the allowance so they can keep it. So you've got to be smart.
That's interesting.
And that, one industry where that's massively prevalent are pubs. So if you're buying a pub or a licensed premises, a brewery who's selling will always try and get that capital allowance retained. There might not be one, but again, if you've got to make those inquiries and then get the client's accountant involved to see where it fits with their own tax strategy.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you've referred to accountants 2 or 3 times, John. Getting them involved early as well is pretty crucial.
Oh yeah. The thing is, when you're dealing with a commercial transaction for a client, you've got to get if there's anything where you need to get the accountants involved, because you've got to kind of migrate your role into being an advisor and not just dealing with the transaction. Because some commercial property transactions, you can almost go through and not know you've done them, but I think you've got to understand, and we certainly understand, that our job stretches beyond that. And so a conversation is always something we would do. You get used to it, when you're working on, say, share purchases, because you get the accountant involved straight away. It's a simple, it might well be the accountant's view is that there's nothing in it, but if part of your job and part of our job is we can save the client even 5,000 or 6,000 quid, we're going to do it.
Well, it's taking a rounded view, isn't it? And it might well be that people aren't aware of these changes. I certainly wasn't until you wrote that article and its impact. And just to wrap it up, you mentioned actually, John, before we kind of started recording, about you can submit a claim during the last couple of years. Was that
potentially? Yeah. The thing with it is so many transactions that have gone through where neither the buyer nor the seller was aware of it. So you'll be selling a unit or you'll be selling something, and it just hasn't been dealt with. And as I was saying before, the standard inquiry on the commercial property inquiries is this kind of, well, I don't know, mate. Go and ask someone else. That happens a lot. So if there are people who've bought property a couple of years, there might be nothing in it, but it's worth a call. It's worth an email. We work very closely with a couple of real specialists in this area that we have as part of our commercial property offering. So we can get an assessment, no obligation. And again, it might be something that could save someone quite quite a considerable amount of money. And it, you know, if it hasn't been dealt with and the seller hasn't claimed, then there is a potential to claim.
Well, listen, it's a great subject to raise, and it's certainly good to make people aware of it, even if, as you say, there isn't anything in it. Now, listen, you've got an office to redecorate, and I've got to go and find out about Kim Kardashian. But that's brilliant, John. Thanks so much for joining us. And as I say, Butterworths are a great partner to LawyerFair, so I really appreciate you giving us your time.
No problem. Cheers, Andrew.
Have a great day. Thanks, John.
You too.
Cheers.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Cheers, Andrew. Bye. Bye.
Send lawyers, guns and money. Send lawyers, guns and money.